In this video, I'll be talking about every new anime that's come out this season that I've actually watched, and either saying if they're worth watching or just making fun of them. This list is in no particular order, by the way. I haven't done this in a bit, but I've been bored, so maybe I'll make this into a regular thing, I don't know. If you want to hear my thoughts on a specific new anime, the timestamps will be in the description. Without a doubt, the worst anime to come out this season is the Iceblade Sorcerer Shall Rule the World. Watch the first episode and take a shot every time the main character says, "Hi, I'm Ray White." This is pretty much the entirety of the first episode. He just walks around the school and introduces himself to all the main characters. He's the epitome of a blank slate. I don't think any of his dialogue was written with any kind of personality in mind, and it's kind of funny just how often he repeats the same thing over and over again in the same episode. And the generic bully character is just as bad. Every time Ray opens his mouth or this guy even remembers that the protagonist exists, he goes, "Ordinary," in this really over-the-top way, and it makes me laugh. I could talk about the plot, but you can probably guess by just looking at this piece of shit what it is. It's a power fantasy with a character going to a magic school and hiding his secret talents without actually hiding them, and even though he shows off how awesome he is quite often, he's still discriminated against for some reason. It's dumb, boring, and generic, but I'm watching it out of a morbid sense of curiosity. As long as we're on the subject of dumb, boring, and generic shit, here's your dose of isekai crap. Handyman Saitou in Another World is actually pretty okay. It has likable characters with likable gimmicks, a surprisingly effective emotional hook in the main character's backstory, and it's also moderately funny. Farming life in Another World is also pretty okay as well. The show has a nice cozy feel to it, and it's also satisfying to watch the characters expanding their village/farm. The strongest sage with the weakest, the reincarnation of the strongest sage in Another World is also pretty okay. Starting to notice a bit of a trend with these shows. It's just standard power fantasy shit that you can enjoy while turning your brain off. Campfire cooking in Another World with my obscure skill. This show also has a pretty cozy vibe to it, and I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit. One of the most notable things about this anime is that it was made by Studio Mappa, so it actually has some good production values in comparison to a lot of other shows in this genre. Reborn to Master the Blade, from Hero King to Extraordinary Squire. Also, the main character is gender swapped. Also, my title is unnecessarily long. This one is also pretty okay. Kind of just more power fantasy bullshit you don't have to think about too much, but it's weird because even though the title says Reborn to Master the Blade, it feels like the main character has just been punching people. They should have named it Reborn to beat the fuck out of people normally and not in a way that relates to swords. This one is an isekai, but it's still basically an isekai. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world. This is the least good show on this part of the video. It has some genuinely good moments of storytelling, but overall it's a very bland story about these four people who learn to trust each other after being betrayed. And the way they grow closer doesn't feel all that natural, which would be fine if they bounced off of each other really well, but they don't. And all of their flashbacks are painfully over the top and present these situations in really one-dimensional ways. The magical revolution of the reincarnated princess and the genius young lady. The thing that sets apart this show from the others in this part of the video is the fact that it's actually really good and not just an okay use of your time. The anime smartly places focus on its characters and developing their relationships with one another as opposed to banking on how interesting its premise is. And I like that a lot. It's like they're actually trying to tell some kind of story instead of coming up with a gimmick and hoping to God it's interesting enough to keep the audience invested for more than 3 episodes or so. It's a good show that I'd highly recommend. Ayakashi Triangle. Some people might expect me to shit on this show, but I actually find it to be quite fun. It's trashy and stupid, but it feels like the writers were aware of how dumb its premise was, so the show doesn't feel like it's pretending to be something it's not. It's about this pair of childhood friends who have drifted apart but become closer again after Matsuri turns into a girl as a result of protecting Suzu from one of the most powerful demons in history. And because of the fact that Suzu was already crushing on Matsuri hard, this gender swap has made life a lot more confusing for the both of them. It's not the best comedy out there, but it has some genuine charm, and honestly, I'm a bit ashamed to say this, but I'm also sort of invested in the main couple, and I do want to see how their relationship develops. Seeing them getting closer to each other is genuinely pretty cute, and I think it's funny seeing them adjust to the unfortunate situation they found themselves in. It's just a goofy show meant for goofy fun, and yeah, I might get bored of it sometime soon, but right now I think it's kinda good. Might as well get all of the romance shows out of the way while I'm on the subject, so here's the cool guy and the cool girl or whatever the fuck. It's okay, there's nothing about this show that makes it memorable to me at least. The concept is interesting, I guess. This guy is descended from an ice spirit, so when he gets emotional, he makes blizzards. And that's about all they do with that concept. All of the character interactions are pretty basic and repetitive as well. Also, all of the characters do this weird thing where their pupils keep moving around in this uncanny way, and it gets kind of distracting at times. I'm not too invested in the show, but I won't drop it out of sheer loneliness. The Angel Next Door spoils me rotten. This one's okay too. I don't like it too much, but I don't hate it either. It's just another romance show with a protagonist who's supposed to be different from all of the guys chasing after this girl whose hair is so orange that they all call her Angel, but that's really just an excuse for the protagonist to spend every waking moment moment with this girl for the purpose of creating a scenario for me to self-insert into, and I'm ashamed to say that it's working and I won't be dropping the show anytime soon. Much like the last show, Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible is just more of the same kind of romance. This time it revolves around a protagonist who's so bland that no one can even see him except for one girl, and that's Kubo. I think I like this a bit more than the angel next door because while Kubo is shown to be smart and athletic, it's not implied that she's absolutely worshipped by everybody in the school, which makes this romance feel more grounded and reasonable, and it allows me to self-insert without feeling guilty because I can make excuses like that. Starting to notice another trend with these shows. Tomo-chan Is a Girl is the only romance that I straight up like, and that's because instead of trying to be all cutesy and shoving in your face how beautiful or interesting the love interests of the show is, Tomo-chan just focuses on being fun. That's the word that I would use to describe the show in its entirety. The characters are fun and likable, the scenarios are entertaining, and the jokes are funny. The way they animate these characters in certain moments makes for some really effective punchlines too. While the main couple may seem like a stereotypical pair where person A is really nervous around person B because of their crush or whatever, their relationship is still interesting because they seem like really good friends and they genuinely like each other's company. There's another aspect to this relationship that's in the background, sure, but it's still very present and I like that. Trigun Stampede, I made a whole damn video on this show and I'll probably continue making videos on the subject, so go watch that video and keep watching the rest of the videos that I make on it, please and thank you. Giant Beasts of Ars. Every episode feels a bit all over the place. There are also a lot of things that happen that just don't contribute to the forward momentum of the plot at all. For example, the first episode starts with an opening scene from the distant past of two warriors talking about some bullshit while a monster is rampaging. Right off the bat, this is such a bland and uninteresting exchange between two characters whose relevance won't be revealed until later on probably. This is one of the worst opening scenes ever, which completely fails to hook me and take an interest in this world. Even putting aside this very generic interaction between these two characters, look at this world. It's so basic and boring, so desolate, and these monster designs fucking suck too. It gives such a horrible first impression for a show that actually has some things to offer. The scene that follows this is a prison break scene where the main character breaks free from a facility that's been holding her captive, and boom, right away the setting is much more interesting. The main characters actually seem to have a personality, and there's some real suspense and intrigue being built up here. But then it goes back to boring shit, focusing on this guy just doing his own thing completely separate from the other stuff we just saw, and it just keeps flip-flopping like this for the entire episode. The inconsistency in terms of quality is honestly astounding. There's some cool stuff in this anime, and it's also refreshing to just see a straight-up fantasy anime as opposed to the mountains of inbred isekai garbage we usually get, but there's so much weighing it down that I can't help but hate it. If you're looking for just straight-up good fantasy anime, then too damn bad, because I don't have a recommendation for you. I think that Fire Hunter is better than the giant beast of ass over there, but okay, it has 3 episodes so far, but they differ greatly in quality. The first episode is really good. It's a strong start to an anime with a world that feels fully realized and well thought out, a story that places a heavy emphasis on character building, and has a good sense for visual storytelling, and the premise has a lot of potential too. Fire Hunter is about a kid who was saved by a Fire Hunter. That Fire Hunter died protecting her, so she's tasked with traveling to the capital and returning his sickle and dog. It's a great setup for this journey. It has a cool art style, and it has a dog as a main character. Awesome. Unfortunately, though, as more and more episodes come out, it just keeps getting weaker and weaker. What I find most disappointing is that it doesn't focus too much on world building. I don't want to see the same setting in each episode when the premise revolves around going on this long journey and traveling across these creative, wondrous, and fantasy-like towns and places. I'd actually like to see those places, but instead, it feels like we've been stuck in this boring-ass train for fucking forever. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. As long as these episodes have some kind of good character building and tracking, that's alright with me. That's the main reason why I like the first episode so much, but these last 2 episodes have also been pretty uneventful in that regard. There are a couple of moments where we get a good look at what these characters are feeling. These moments are great, but there are only a couple moments in 2 very tedious and boring episodes. This is just so disappointing to me because I can feel the passion that these people have for this world and these characters, at least the main characters, but it's brought down by how misplaced their focus is. For real though, there's one fantasy anime that I'm enjoying quite a bit, and that's Sugar Apple Fairy Tail. Towards the beginning it's a bit rough, but once the main duo starts interacting with each other, the show becomes pretty enjoyable. It might feel a bit basic, but simplicity isn't necessarily a bad thing. Here's the premise of the show. Fairies have been enslaved by humans, and the protagonist buys a warrior fairy to guard her as she travels to a town named Lewiston to participate in a sugarcraft competition. It's slow in the beginning, and I don't think it's for everybody, but I found the way the relationship between the main duo progressed to be pretty engaging and moving, which is why I thought the first few episodes being relatively uneventful felt justified. Buddy Daddies, now this is a good anime so far. Unique, stylish, fun, and the first 3 episodes do a great job of creating a relationship between the 3 main characters that feels incredibly real while also being incredibly entertaining. This show is about these 2 hitmen who have a chance encounter with Miri, the daughter of one of their targets, and because she's all alone now, they decide to take care of her in her parents' stead. Miri is an example of a good kid character. She's not as good as, say, Anya, but she generally feels like she has a lot more to offer than the typical cute baby girl moe shit that a lot of other kid characters use as a crutch to get the audience to like them. The way these two become closer with Miri is really well written and charming. The progression of their relationship is noticeable, but it doesn't ever feel like it's being shoved in your face. It bounces between drama and comedy very well and strikes a better balance than a certain other show made by the studio. Speaking of comedy, the premise makes for some really creative jokes and setups, and I like it a lot. I highly recommend this. While we're on the subject of good anime, let's keep the ball rolling with fuck. Mou Ippon is weird. I watched the first few episodes and thought they were good, but I also couldn't help but feel bored by it. Maybe it's just the way that everything looked. I mean, this art style is just so fucking bland. It's about this girl quitting judo after graduating middle school, only to rediscover her passion for the sport and deciding to try it again in high school. It's pretty competently directed, and I found the scenes where the protagonist remembers how much fun she had with judo to be pretty damn moving. If you skip over this anime, I honestly wouldn't blame you. In actuality, I'm thinking about dropping it myself, but for what it was, I thought it was pretty good, even if on the surface it looks like the most boring show ever. Back to really great anime this season, High Card is really great. The concept of playing cards giving you special powers and abilities is just a really appealing one, and I think it's also cool that the characters refer to themselves as players. This show manages its characters really well. Even though each episode escalates pretty quickly, I never got the sense that it was rushing anything or handling a character's motives and relationships in a clumsy, half-baked way. The episodes revolving around specific characters so far have been really good about giving you insights into these characters without being super obnoxious about it. And on top of that, I just like Finn as a protagonist. He's not just a generic character who gets roped into a situation that's a lot bigger than he knows. He's an actually charismatic guy whose motives being rooted in money makes for a more interesting and unique story. So yeah, the main character is awesome, the rest of the characters are awesome, and the premise is fucking cool. I'm having an amazing time with this anime and I can't recommend it enough. I wanted to talk about Onimai last because it is, it's good. I'm enjoying it a lot, actually, but it's fucking weird. Like, just go look up the opening on YouTube, and that's all I have to say about that. This show is about a shut-in, Mahiro, who gets turned into a little girl because of one of his sisters, Mihari's, experiments. One thing I'd like to point out is that this show was made by Studio Bind, the same studio that made everybody's favorite Isekai Mushoku Tensei, which is why this show looks pretty damn great. This show is mostly a slice-of-life comedy, but what really sold me on this anime was a dramatic beat that completely blindsided me on my first watch. It turns out that Mihari turned her brother into a girl as a part of her plan to rehabilitate him, and as the show goes on, it's also revealed that a part of why she did this was just to get her brother to spend more time with her again. And that's really nice. It almost makes me forget all of the other stuff. What I'm trying to say here is that if you look past that admittedly very weird aspect of the show, you'll find a very touching story about these siblings who grow closer again after years of just ignoring each other. And as someone who's personally been in that situation before, this spoke to me, and I like it a lot. So to sum up, the shows that I would absolutely recommend are High Card, Buddy Daddies, Magical Revolution of Reincarnated Princess and the Genius Young Lady, Tomo-chan Is, and Onimai. That's all, and I'll be going now.